Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Metal Mill 52 Workshop. Been pretty busy with work and other commitments this week, so I haven't really got a lot done. So all I'm planning on doing today, this is the finished replacement for the tooth rest nut. And as you can see, I got a little overexcited when I was milling out the notch for the rod that keeps it from rotating when it's tightened up with the ball handle. So thought about the easiest way I can think to fix that excuse me, is I have a piece of steel that's exactly the right thickness, and I've gone ahead and marked it out as the size. Let me see if I can set this up here. There we go. Hopefully you can see this. So I'm about to bandsaw that off, and I'll cut it to the same width as the piece, and then I'll just heat this up and silver solder this little extra piece of steel in place, and then I can file or mill. But the idea is that you want the flat to be right at the bottom of the hole, not significantly below it like that. So then I'll have to mill a little notch, mill or file a little notch in the rod here. I went ahead and made the rods out of stainless steel. And let's see, here's the other piece that I made out of steel, and this rod's out of stainless steel. That corresponds to that part right there that you see in the picture from the Duncan metal lamps, Duncan metal pages. So I'll get that done, and then the only other thing to do is to go ahead and make the little rods, the clamping bolts for the upper and lower part. And that should be a fun project to do tonight. I'll bring you back for the next step. Okay, here's the part all ready to go. I've got the little piece of steel in place. I put some flux on it, and I've got the two pieces of silver solder laying on top of the piece of steel that's being added. And I've got a fresh propane bottle here, and as you can probably tell, I'm actually heating from the inside, because the idea is you want the solder to go to the metal that's being heated. So you heat it where you want the solder to flow to. So I can see the flux melting now, bubbling. There goes one piece of solder that's closer to the flame, and hopefully the other one will melt in just a minute. And it'll go in, and there we go. So the second one's melted. I'll just keep the heat on for a little bit, run it around this way, make sure it flows all the way down with the camera in one hand and the torch in the other. So I always like to keep heating it even after you see the metal melt, the solder melt. Keep heating it for a while, and hopefully it'll all solidify together. It should be just fine. So I'll let it cool now. Cut the flame off. Just using an ordinary propane torch. I'll let that cool for quite a while. Basically, I let it so it's not exactly cold to the touch, but fairly cool. And then what I'll do is quench it. You put it in water or some pickle. Some acid. I just use, I think I've covered this before, I just use lemon juice or lime juice, and cleans off the dirty part there, and file and sand it, and we should be good to go. And while the silver soldered piece is in the pickle, now I'm preparing to mill off the little 1/8 inch notch. So I've zeroed out the cutter here at the height of the bolt, and I'll just proceed to mill that. Oh, sorry, you can't even see. I've got it in a 5C, 1/2 inch 5C collet in the Collet Block. Extremely useful and handy. So I'm going to turn all the machines on, and I'll catch a second or two of the milling. Okay, you can see I've touched it off, milled a little tiny flat, and I'm going to do it A-bomb style, kind of raise the table up, lock the X-axis, taking off a little bit at a time until I get down to about 77 thou more to go. So I zeroed the Z with the cutter on the shaft of the bolt there. So make sure sure the Z's unlocked. Raising it up. Just take off about 20 thou at a time. Nice and slow. There we go. About 56 thou more to go. A nice clean cut. I've never really made anything with clamping bolts like this before, and as you could see from some of the other parts that I made, like on the base, I do plan on using cotters instead of clamping bolts. I'm down to the last 30 thou, so I'm going to ease up like 15 thou at a time. Last thing I want to do is like mill through the bolt. More. That should be 3 thou over. And then, let's see. Yeah, you can see it's just touching the bolt there. So I think that's good. I'm going to call it good right there and cut it off and stop. And I'll bring it back and show you how it all fits together. Alright, good. So we've got the new piece silver soldered in place. You can see it pretty clearly there. Woohoo! As you can also see, it fits okay. It's not clamped. Let me see if I can set this down. And so I've got the notch milled in the rod. Probably I milled it a little deeper than I needed to, but it doesn't matter because it sits on the ledge there where the new piece is silver soldered in place. And it'll clamp good with the little Quorn ball handles that I made, the 5/16 24, so we can declare a victory on this part right here. Let me set it out there so it parallels the photograph. So you see that'll clamp in place. That'll be good. And I've got the other part made right here. So now I'll turn to and see if I can make a couple little bolts. I think I'm going to use some 5/16 or 3/8 inch steel to make some through bolts that go here. And I'll bring you back for those. Alright, here I've taken a piece of 5/16 inch steel, just ordinary cold rolled steel, and turned it down to 3/16 inch for the body, and I threaded it 1032 on the end, and now I'm cutting it off about a 35 thousandths head on it. And then I'll just mill, when this is done, I'll make another one, and I'll just mill flats so that the head is basically D-shaped. Alright, so I got both of the little screws made for the end of the tooth rest holder, and what I did, I took some 5/16 inch steel, put it in a 5C collet, and I turned it down to 3/16. That left the little head about 40 thousandths of an inch thick, and as you can see, it fits. They fit in here. Let's see if I can do this one-handed here, but I've got two of them. And in a second I'll be putting them in a 5C collet, and then in a 3/16 inch 5C collet, and then a collet block. I'll show you that stuff here. Let's see, I'll do this all on my lap perhaps. So here's the 5C collet. Take and put the screw in the end. Little homemade bolt. I really do like being able to make my own fasteners. It's really handy. Leave it out. I'm not going to leave it sticking out very far. And this is the collet block if you've never seen one or don't have any. These things are fantastic. It has a side that's bored out for the 5C collet, and it's got a little tang in the back that accepts this. Let me show you the anti-rotation slot. There it is. So that's on the bottom. I'll stick this in, rotate it around so it slides in. There we go. And then a lot easier to do that with two hands. So get it in, and then there's a couple of different holders you can use. I just like to use the little ring that screws on there, and I tighten it up with a pair of vice grips, and then put it in the mill and I can just mill off that flat so that the head of the bolt is a D shape. So I'll do that for both of these and bring you back when that's done. Alright, well, I'm going to call this a wrap on this part of the project. Naturally this tooth rest wouldn't be sitting this high up on the machine, but I just put it up high to make it easier to take pictures of. So here's one of the ball handles in place. I need to make some custom washers for this. Obviously I've just thrown on some washers and a large oversized nut, but you can see the purpose of the anti-rotation notch there. It looks good, and the little D-shaped screws that I made works good as well. I actually end up putting this back in the mill and milling these slots or flat spots a little bit deeper, just like about 10 thou there, so it was perfectly at the bottom of the hole. And anyway, obviously I need to make some custom washers for these as well, so that you want it so that it tightens in a quarter of a turn and it ends in a place that's convenient. So anyway, real happy about that, really pleased. So the next step is, let's see, as you can probably tell, maybe not, let me get this stuff out of the way. I think, I was thinking I was going to work on the rocking lever, but I think actually the next thing I'm going to work on is the wheel head for the motor mount. It's a little cast iron thing that gets bored to 1.25 inches here. And I'm not going to use the split thing. I really don't like this split, so I'm going to use an actual cotter like I did here. So a brass cotter like that was described in a lot of the different resources, the Tom Blau's specifically. And then here is the wheel head. This is where the spindle goes, this wheel head bracket. The spindle goes in the part where surrounded by my hands. And this part, there's pivots that part gets mounted in. Here I am, this part, that part. But I'll talk more about that later. There's going to be a ton of machining on this thing, and it's going to have to be pretty exact. So that's something you can think about for the next time. And if anybody's built one of these things and wants to give me advice, I'm more than happy to hear it. But I'm glad I've made a little bit of progress today on the Quorn, and glad these steel replacement parts, this one here specifically, it worked out well. I think it looks really darn good compared to the the casting that I broke. So this will go in the scrap bin. You never know when a little piece of cast iron like that might be handy for something, so I'll save it for the next time. And anyway, I will keep you posted. Thanks again for watching, everybody.